Hello, today's video is how to get a standard telephone, PSTN telephone, for example a BT telephone in the UK, which has one of these plugs, working on this Zyxel VMG VMG8825-B50B router, which has inbuilt ATA functionality, which is analog telephone adapter functionality, with this phone 1 and phone 2 port on the back of the router. And the telephone light there indicates whether it's configured and working or not. So the first thing you need is a telephone to plug in. This is a really old style corded telephone. You probably or might want to use a decked cordless phone. So the trouble in the UK you have is that it uses this BT style socket, and on the back of this router that's not going to plug into there. That is an RJ11 socket. This is a BT plug. I don't know what its specific model number is. No, there will be one, I just don't know what it is. So on eBay or Amazon you need one of these converters. So at one end is an RJ11 socket with the 2 pins or 2 wires that are in use in the middle here, rather than on the outer pins, and on the other end a standard BT socket. So I can now plug the telephone's wire into that, and now on the back of the router into phone 1 I can plug the telephone. So we now have the telephone plugged into the router, and when we pick up the call you get a tone that says that it's not configured. It sounds like this. And when you pick up the phone and it's not configured, this telephone light here on the router just flashes. So that's the physical plugging things into the router part done. The next part is in the web interface, which I'll now move over to my computer to show you. Okay, so I've now gone over to the computer and I will fire up a web browser so we can get into the web interface of the router. So I'm going to go over to the IP address of the router, which is 192.168.1.1, and then press enter. And here's the web interface for the router. Get the password for the router. Default username is admin. Log in. And we're now logged in. So if we go to the dots or the lines in the top right, go to VoIP, and the first thing we want to do under telephone is go to region and make sure that you've got the correct region set, so that the tones that you hear when you pick up the telephone sound as the customer or as you are expecting. So we want Great Britain for this video here, and for, I guess, the call service module probably relates to stuff like caller ID and the way it presents caller ID and the data method it uses. So make sure, again, if you're in Europe or the UK, that you leave it on Europe type, and then click on apply. It says here that the changes won't take effect until device reboot. I've found that the tones that you hear when you pick up the telephone actually change immediately, but there may be stuff like the caller ID protocol doesn't change until you reboot. So now that's the basic settings done. If we go back to the menu in the top right, go to VoIP and go to SIP. First thing you want to do is go to SIP service provider and click on for the SIP account the little edit button and fill in the details that it's asking you to fill in. So SIP service provider name is just a name, whatever you'd like to call it. So I'm going to call it AAISP, which is Andrews and Arnold, which is a provider of internet services and VoIP services in the UK. SIP server proxy address. Andrews and Arnold's instructions say not to fill in a proxy address, but interestingly, you'll see it in a moment. If I leave that blank and then fill in the registrar server address, and the domain. If we try and save that now, it'll tell me that the proxy server cannot be empty. So I'm going to have to fill in that. If you do the advanced options here, there's another section where you can set an outbound proxy address. So I presume those two are different. And what Andrews and Arnold mean by do not set a proxy address means do not set an outbound proxy address. So I filled in this using the information provided by Andrews and Arnold. Your provider will provide different servers. So if you're on, for example, VoIPtalk.org, you will fill in the details they give you, which I think is still just VoIPtalk.org in all of these. So save that. We now need to go to the accounts and edit the account number 1. Again, using the details that Andrews and Arnold, or whoever your provider is, have given you. Just make sure you tick on the enable SIP account, otherwise you can fill in all of this information and then forget to enable the account and you won't be able to use it. So I'm going to take the telephone number that I've got on the SIP service, and I guess account number is probably again a bit like just a name, so I could actually call this office phone or whatever I wanted, but I'm going to give it the telephone number. The username is definitely that, as provided by Andrews and Arnold, and the password is here. For those of you that are thinking, oh, let me give it a go trying to use my VoIP service, that password will be changed. So you can attempt to authenticate against it, that one won't work. Plus this is a test number, the number's probably still not even registered by the time you view this video. And for me, I only want, for the voice features and the compression types, the 2 highest quality ones that are the most compatible are the G711U and G711A protocols. I actually don't want it to fall back to any other potentially worse compression method. So I'm going to, for the third one, deselect that and set that to none. And then I think the rest of it we could probably leave default. I find a lot of customers get confused by call waiting. So they're on a call and their previous BT or standard PSTN service, when they got another call, the call didn't come through and the person calling either went straight through to the voicemail on the network or got an engaged tone. So I'm actually going to turn off call waiting. You obviously might want to do that whatever way you would like to do that. Send caller ID is fine, and also there's only going to be one telephone plugged into this. I want to do it disable call transfer. So again, keeping this as similar to the standard PSTN service or BT service that the customer used to have. And that is basically it. So I'll now click on OK, and hopefully the light on the router will light up and my SIP provider will tell me that the router is registered. Let's find out. Yep, the SIP provider is now showing that there is a Zyxel VMG8825-B50B is registered to the account. Also, click on the menu in the top right, go to System Monitor and VoIP Status. You can see that it's registered. So I'm going to jump out of this screen session and back to real life. Okay, so here we are back in real life, and you can see now on the router the phone light, the telephone is not picked up, so I'm not on a call. The phone light is now solid green. Let's see if we can make some phone calls. So if you pick up the telephone, it does start flashing there, and if I pick this up you should hear the BT style ringtone for the UK. And if I try and dial a number, so that's working and call is going through. If I refresh it while on the call, it shows that the number that's been dialed, and it shows that there is a call in progress on that status page using G711A, I think it was. Anyway, PCMA. Hang that up. That light stops flashing, and let's go back to the menu. Go to VoIP. Aha, there we go. And call history is where you can see a previous history of all the calls. And call summary, it just looks like a total of all the calls. So there you go. That's a video on how to configure the SIP or the VoIP settings on this Zyxel router. If it has been helpful to you, it would be really helpful to me if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube channel. You don't need to have the video notifications switched on for new videos, but the subscriber numbers really do help. Thank you very much.